Well, welcome.
All right, thank you.
This is Craig Mullins. He's joining us today to talk about issues of puberty, and probably we'll go on from there with questions I have for you. So
Sounds great.
will you introduce yourself? Just kind of talk about your business and
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So my name is Craig Mullins. I'm a licensed professional counselor, mental health, and I've been working with people diagnosed with autism, ADHD. 20 years-ish, give or take. Been about 10 years in Rapid City, South Dakota. My wife and I work together. She's a psychologist, and we tend to meet with people that have been diagnosed with ADHD and or autism, and I've worked with a lot of teens over the years that are going through puberty, that are experiencing it from early adolescence into adult. Yeah, yeah.
That's hard for it's hard for everybody, as we were just kind of mentioning. It's hard for a hard time for everybody, and if you have other things you're struggling with at the same time.
Sure, absolutely.
I'm sure they appreciate your expertise. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you can just start telling us kind of what.
That's great. That's great.
And then we'll chat, and I'll ask you questions.
Yeah, and yeah, it is, just obviously all of us as human beings, as adults, have experienced puberty. It's part of the normal process of existing as a human being. If you live long enough, you will go through those stages. And the typical onset tends to be about 8 to 14 years old. Girls tend to start it a little bit earlier than boys. And it's interesting because when we think puberty, we think the secondary characteristics like breast, hips in females, the voice change in males, the hair on the body. That's present for both males and females. But we don't realize it so much that our 8, 9-year-olds are going through puberty. That are beginning that. And the classic hormones that are involved during puberty for females is estrogen, and the classic hormone for males. And I think that's the big thing to remember or to keep in our minds for 8 and 9-year-olds throughout, is those hormones and the impact of those intense hormones on a human being, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's earlier than I would have thought.
I know, right?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say like 12 to 17, or like the top end, but you said 9, like 8 or 9 to like until 14.
14 is when it starts. Yep. If we think back to our time in high school or adolescence, we often think of people who started early and people who started late, like we call those start lines. And the big thing too, yes, we were just talking about is the onset of puberty, and the physical changes that are happening, but also on a hormonal level, those things that are changing as well. And the thing that I think stands out in the world of autism is that development tends to be delayed. And so, like when we think most people are done with puberty, the change from adolescence to adulthood, 17, 18, 19 years old, that there's a lot of delay for people with autism, that it extends. So that's just something to keep in mind when we're having a relationship with somebody that has autism, and we might be thinking, hey, you should be done with this. It's like, nope, they're still going through it. I think I think it's 24 years old for the brain to fully develop for males, a little bit earlier for females, and with autism, it tends to be a little bit later than that.
Yeah, and we were kind of talking too about just the mismatch. Like your body might kind of be been going through it, but your mental progression might still be lagging behind. Like we're saying with my daughter, if she has her period, she's so young, but she doesn't, she doesn't understand that socially how to manage it.
Mhm.
So,
And then,
that
right,
makes
and,
sense.
and then you navigate that with her, and you by being more aware of her menstrual cycle,
Oh, yeah.
than she is,
That's true.
and knowing that we have to have this on hand, we need to be prepared.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been.
Well, and tell mom if you notice this stuff, because she
Mhm.
just wouldn't worry about it. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure for parents.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the challenges for parents, I don't know if it's, I don't know, like in my world, we talk about this all the time. And so to talk about menstrual cycles, erections, um, hormones, um, sexual development is pretty normal because you just have these conversations. It's a pretty intimate level or intimate relationship. And so I recognize that um, for a lot of parents, like they don't use the word menstrual cycle or they don't even say the word period. There's like there's certain phrases or words for it,
Yeah.
that their family uses or they don't even acknowledge it whatsoever. I
That'd
think
make it even harder.
I think what is for me it's confusing,
Yeah.
especially when we think of the world of autism. If they tend to be more the classic black and white, let's just call it what it is. And it's like, okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
It's part of the reproduction cycle. It's part of human sexuality. It's part of growth and development. It kind of normalizes it all, as opposed to something taboo or something to be ashamed of or awkward. Um, uh, um, and I think that's the big deal is to like for in my world thinking about me and even with my kiddos is normalizing it, um, um, and and empathizing. It's like yeah, is this confusing? Um, uh, I keep getting all these stories in my head, and we could sit and tell stories. We'll get to some of those. Um, uh, and obviously, I feel like for adults, we all know, puberty, um, in males, the enlargement of the testes and penis in boys, for females, the growth of ovaries, and menstruation, and then obviously the changes of acne, the sweat production, and changes of the body composition, and that's all like think it's good to keep that in our um, uh, in our minds when we're interacting with our kiddos. Uh, I don't know if my kids will ever see that, but I'm hesitant to tell stories about what they're going through. But I do. I see it in my home with my adolescent daughter, and the big emotions that she has. It's like, okay, this is important. This is a big deal. Um, and I think it was a couple of weeks ago, she's like, I don't even know why I'm crying. I was like,
I think my older daughter would have said the same
yeah,
thing
yeah,
about that age.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was something that was hard that she was going through and having to navigate it. And I think there's a part where she wanted to avoid it. She wanted to not engage it, but she knew she had to and was going to. But it was just creating all these emotions in her. And yeah, tons of estrogen. Well, I didn't say that to her because
That might not have helped.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's estrogen. I was like, what the heck are you talking about, Dad? It's like, no, yeah, that's tough. That's hard. Yeah, I hear you're saying, and acknowledging it. Um, um, and then so yeah, being present, empathizing, um, um, yeah. Um, and then and thinking about people with autism, um, and gosh, yeah, and a lot of the folks meet with ADHD. Um, uh, there's a young lady I meet with now who's in her early 20s, and man, she's phenomenal. I've noticed since she was an early teen, and she is frequently talks about her sensitivities, and uh, One is brushing her teeth. Cognitively, she's aware that she needs to brush her teeth. Cognitively, she knows that if she doesn't, there's a high chance she's going to get cavities. It's going to be painful and whatnot. Um, uh, but she doesn't like it. She doesn't like the way it feels. It's so irritating to her, and then she's got to do it twice a day, and so she doesn't. And she says that, and I think it's the same for. We know that when boys, I mean all kids, but boys in particular, be about 10 years old and 11, it's like, all right, it's time that you take a shower more frequently. The Sunday shower isn't going to be enough. And on a personal level, I remember when it was normal for me to take a bath on Sunday to when it was like, okay, who's doing this every day? For a number of reasons, I stunk. And also because I was in middle school and I didn't want the classmates to acknowledge my stink, and so, it's like, okay. Um, uh, but a lot of people with autism, man, like I've heard it's painful. It hurts. And it's like, okay, so how do you navigate that?
And maybe also they don't realize, like Alyssa just wouldn't care if she stunk. Like it doesn't cross her mind that somebody thinks she stinks or that she just wouldn't notice necessarily.
Yep.
I mean, so there's that plus, and if somebody has an aversion to it, that together, you can see that. And then put social middle school in with that.
Yep.
Accept that very well.
And for her, it's like, what does it matter what someone else thinks?
Yeah.
What's it? Who cares?
Yeah, she doesn't worry about it.
What impact does that have on me?
I just came back from camp on Friday, and his grandma noticed his teeth were blue. He was eating blue supper. She's like, "When did you last brush your teeth?" Apparently, he didn't brush his teeth the entire time he was at camp.
Yeah.
Just didn't cross my mind. It's okay.
Yep.
It's not something that's.
It's not on the radar, right? Yeah. We've all, I don't know if you guys, I've been camping where there's no showers, and like you can do it for 3-4 days. And then it's like, oh man, you can't wait to get in the shower and get cleaned up and have running water again. But it's true, yeah, for a lot of people, it's like it's not even in there. And that's, and for adolescent boys, early adolescents, or I don't want to say more so, but that there is that aloofness to it. It's like they don't think about it, they don't care. But as somebody like your daughter, I think
She's
13. Okay.
Yeah. So she's,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
she's the same way. I mean, I like how you said it. That's just like, why would she care? It's not her problem.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So then it's like the balance between like healthy.
It is, right?
And also social acceptance.
Yep. And I think that resonates more so, right? If my teeth look gross or I smell bad, what's the big deal? But when we're able to, it's like, okay, you're getting lesions on your skin, or it can be lesions or cavities and pain there. I don't know, might resonate more. But I've known some families that have used like, okay, you don't want to get in the shower, and there's wipes. Let's use wipes to clean cracks in the crevices of the body, because there can be detriment to not.
Well, and I wonder, maybe later you'll talk about it, but like for us, it's like we have just the routine. Like she doesn't really even know. I mean, like we're taking a bath so you don't smell bad, but we're just taking a bath because that's what we do, and we're brushing our teeth because that's what we do. And it's like, here's our 5 steps we do in the morning. But it's like maybe aware. I suppose maybe adolescents sometimes start to fight that a little bit if it's mom's schedule, but the schedule to us seems like it helps. What's next? We do that.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
But I don't know if I'm just hopefully that continues.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Something that works.
So for now, anyway. So it's knock on wood.
Yeah. And then kind of one of the classic experiences of puberty is the mood swings. I think everybody who's beyond adolescence. That's kind of what there is just a enormous increase of anxiety and depression during adolescence. And a lot of it's because of the hormonal change. It is just that intensification of testosterone and estrogen in this. And it's also, I mean, obviously developmentally what's going on, kind of learning some mastery at certain things or experiencing some failure at certain things, being part of a group or not being part of a group. Or part of the group 1 minute and not part of the group the next minute, that. But it's anxiety and depression during adolescence is enormous. And so much of I think, and I think parents say this too. A lot of parents say this, yeah, just need to get, and then it stabilizes, and then it will be, and it does. There might be a few people where I mean, some people it'll linger, but for the most part, just getting through puberty, it will start to become more manageable. Whether you learn skills to cope with it or not, or to manage it, but just the fact that you're having a decrease in hormone levels in and of itself.
Well, it probably helps for parents or for people around to realize, like, even if you don't discuss it with the child, like, I know why this is happening, and that helps me be calmer about it. Like, if I can figure out some reason, then it's like I can be more patient. When it just seems so mysterious, this blow up for no reason, it's harder to, as a caregiver, I think. But we do, I mean, every month we kind of know the week before.
Do you?
Yeah. And because
are her emotions
Yep.
more intense?
Yep.
Okay.
Just more irritable in general, I'd say.
Okay.
And honestly, I mean, I think that's pretty common with everybody, but with her especially. But it makes us more patient knowing that there's at least like, oh yes, this is making sense.
and too, like, and this is what I think what's difficult, I think, is not taking it personal, or blocking your authority, because there is that, right? Do so because I said so, or and you are the parent, you keep them safe. But give it an appropriate amount of pushback, and learning learning what that is, and what that looks like. The gosh, yeah. And then thinking about males, for males, I mean, it's right. Okay, so there's the awkwardness too during puberty. When we think of females, we think of the menstrual cycle. With males, we think of erections and wet dreams, and just the awkwardness of that. And I think it's helpful, just like you said, just even knowing. It's like, okay, this is what's happening. That the male body will ejaculate for no other reason, but that's how it was made. That's what it does. And so, and typically it happens when they're asleep. And it's just the body ridding itself. Sperm, and that's confusing, I think, it's confusing for everybody. But then, I was like, how do you navigate that with your And I think there's like kind of an appropriate level of discussion or conversation. I think it's more about making them aware of it, and there's not necessarily a need to have a conversation every time it occurs, or to sit down and okay, let's process this. It's like, yeah, just, do what you need to happen. Change clothes, clean your teeth, whatever, and just move on with life.
So not making a big deal out of something
Yeah,
that's just,
and just like you were talking earlier with your daughter, menstruating, and if it's on her clothing, you don't need blood on her clothing. It's like, okay.
let me know so I can help you take care of it.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. And growing up with sisters, right? Like seeing the sheets and I was like, what the heck? As a child, I
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. Like, okay. Just clean up.
Move on.
Yep, exactly.
That's good advice.
And
Overreact.
exactly, and that's the thing, right? Is keeping our reactions in check. Um, uh, when especially their emotions may be heightened. And I think, um, them learning to understand their own bodies, and what's going on, and how to, when we think, socially, um, understanding what's the appropriate amount for people to know about or to share. Um, the word boundaries. Um, it's like, that permission. Can I give you a hug? That's normal. That's kind of like what we would encourage people to do. And then
Maybe more directly explaining that to a kiddo on the spectrum.
yeah. It's like this.
Some of
As
those
a matter of fact, you have to say, "Can I hold your hand? Can I give you a hug?" And allowing that person to say yes or no. And um, and that's whatever if they say yes, great. If they say no.
Yeah.
And if they say I'm not so sure, that means no. It's like the only time you give someone a hug when you say, "Can I give you a hug?" is if they say yes. Yes.
But almost like a direct explanation of these options.
Yeah.
Probably good.
Yeah. And having clear boundaries. Over the years, thinking of the different families I've met with, how many time, what's an appropriate amount of time for a person to masturbate? And it's like, like,
I bet you get that.
yeah,
question.
right. It's
Yeah.
like, because a lot of times, with ADHD and autism, there can be a hypersexuality, and it feels good. There's also a calmingness to it, um, and when they're experiencing stress, that's frequently turn to feel calm. Um, and the families I've met with have had to set clear boundaries on, okay, this is when and this is where. It's like in your bedroom, nowhere else. This video I was watching the other day is, so he was talking about keeping it to the bedroom, because sometimes, it's like, well, you can do it in the bathroom also. That sometimes can move over to the restroom as well. It's like, no, we want to draw a clear distinction.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
I know, right? It's only in your bedroom.
Yeah.
And caregivers, parents kind of get into that place of, they know their kiddo, and it's like, hey, it looks like you might need to spend some time based on how they're positioning themselves or how frequent they're touching themselves. Say, hey, it looks like you need to spend some time in your room. And right, hopefully it's that easy. But we also recognize it's not, or it's not always for families.
Well, and taking the shame out of it. This is what it is. This is why.
Yep.
It's not naughty, it's not dirty.
Yep.
It's just part of your body.
Yep. Yep.
It probably takes time too to make that routine and get those boundaries figured out.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and, um, and redirecting, right? It's or school. Or I've got one instance in my head of a gentleman at a camp. It was too public. Um, You know, and helping them through that. Um, and having clear boundaries and being firm and assertive, but also at the same time being patient and caring, which is um, um, and this is like what you were talking about with the routines and predictability of having that system, that process of okay, this is when we shower, this is when we brush teeth, this is what it looks like. That I would think, I don't know. I mean, you know, for thinking about my family, with of my menstruation and um, I've not had a discussion with my daughter, um, uh, and partly because I was encouraged not to, because I know, yeah, exactly. One, because I have a great wife, and she's got it. But the other part is I probably would talk too academic, and it's just it'd just be for that to be a weird conversation. Um, um, uh, but allowing that stop to Walgreens unexpectedly for whatever reason. Hey, Dad, I gotta go buy Walgreens. It's like, all right, let's go. Not, not at, it's like, okay, all right, you want me to come in? No, you can wait here. Okay, cool. I'll wait here.
You're off the hook.
Yeah, exactly. And and as a parent, right? Like I would want to know, like, what are you gonna buy? Why are we stopping? I may not want to go buy Walgreens. I want to just get home and whatever.
But at this time of life, realizing
It's like, okay, all right, hey Dad, I gotta go to Walgreens. Okay. And doing that. I think I don't know, like that just goes a long ways, I think, for making it normal and less awkward than it needs to be. So, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, the increased sensitivity. Um, like when we are thinking about people with autism and they tend to have a heightened um, sensory system, and we may not think about um, how shampoo smells. Um, I personally, I don't like going through the perfume department at Macy's because it drives me nuts. All the fragrances, um, uh, or the aerosol sprays. But for a person with autism who has that heightened um, smell, using detergents just and stuff that are outside. And again, that's nothing I would have ever thought of had I not had relationships with people. Or Ivory soap, or Zest. My family are not fully clean and sure Zest fully cleaned. And knowing that man, that is irritating to a lot of people. So, okay. Um, uh, because that's hygiene is such a huge part of puberty. Um, oily skin in the smells, and so whatever is gonna encourage them and allow them to navigate it. And yeah, and
I think just addressing it is hard. Like, I mean, I think of students I've had over the years in class, it's like, I don't know who should talk to them about this, but somebody's got to talk to them about it. Like, certainly not me as a classroom teacher. So, you know, I'll have them go to the counselor, something, but just even having the conversation with the person
yeah,
could be offensive. Like, they might be offended that I brought it up. Like, no, I'm fine.
yeah.
So I think that delicate, you know, walk around. Like, is there something bugging you about that shampoo? Do you need some different shampoo? I
That's a
noticed you're
good
not
point.
using it
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
at your house.
Whether it's a washcloth or a scrunchie, are those called scrunchies? Those things in the shower?
Maybe.
Yeah, loofah. Yeah. I don't even know what they're called. Yeah. Um, um, well, how can we make this successful? What do we need?
What would make you like this better? But
Yeah.
not saying directly. I noticed, yeah, like, telling someone they smell bad isn't very nice, but
Yeah. Yeah, it hurt, right? And yeah, it can hurt people. And then, oh, she doesn't like me. And then um, yeah. Oh yeah, gosh, so the social cues. Um, Thinking of the people over the years I've known with autism um, that have that somebody has expressed an interest in them uh, or reciprocated a friendship, and sometimes how that can be interpreted as them having a crush on me, or I mean, it just gets, I don't know, it can just get confusing, and it's confusing for neurotypical people as well. Um, um, uh, there's been a few people over the years that I was like, hey, I've got a girlfriend. All right, cool. What's her name? Oh, sure, but kind of say, oh, that's pretty extreme.
you're like, do you really have a girlfriend? Or
Yeah,
is it
exactly.
the
It's like,
internet?
right, yeah, yeah.
Is it-
Um, and I think of one young man, I think he knew what her name was. But yeah, I've got a girlfriend. Oh yeah, what's her name? She's like, do and it's just them learning um, to navigate that dynamic, that friendship relationship. Well, I wrote early on, I wouldn't even call it romantic. Hey, this person likes me. Um, on an internal level, hey, that feels good to be liked. know, at least they're smiling at me. Like that's huge. They might want to sit next, which is enormous. But it is for a lot of for people knowing like what the rules are. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but asking, can I hold your hand? Can I walk with you? Can I give you a hug? Um, uh, and I think that's helpful to make it very black and white, so that there isn't any confusion.
I was just thinking of bullying too. Maybe I'll talk about that. The definition of bullying. People don't want to sit with you at lunch. They're not bullying you. They just don't prefer to be with you, but that's not bullying.
Yeah.
But that whole span of emotions is tough too. Like, I don't feel included.
And it is like I hear a lot about people getting bullied. And it
sometimes
does.
I'm sure it really is bullying.
Right. Sometimes it really is. Like it is bullying. And sometimes it's somebody making a your mom joke. And okay, you didn't find it amusing, it hurt your feelings.
It's not necessarily.
I know, right? Yeah.
Is it and meanness versus just, I don't know, rude? I don't know. Like, did they do it on purpose or did they just not want to be around you? Like, how do you tell?
Yeah.
And how do you get yourself into a group you want to be in? Like, all of that is so tricky for everybody.
Yep.
For our kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And uh, yeah, and having the shared experiences, that people have in common, um, that they connect over. Um, Gosh, whether it's dinosaurs, Pokemon, Minecraft. Um, I know Wendy's worked with a couple people, football stats, baseball stats. That was their deal, you know.
But I think we kind of talked before too about just having a little bit older group of kids somehow finding some activities, like you said, whether it's
Yeah.
bowling or, I watched a little webinar in one of the groups I think they were in Arizona, a Pokemon club was making nice donations to their autism society and doing some fundraising because there were several kids in the Pokemon club that were on the spectrum, and this was an organization they cared about. But
Yeah,
it was pretty cool. Like they would get together every week, and then those people became their friends.
Yeah.
You know, didn't start out that way necessarily, but there's less the stuff in the hallway and the stuff on the playground is the scariest. But
Yeah.
if you're gonna sit, like you said, have a shared experience,
yeah,
that's
and
better.
there's
easier.
yep, exactly, yep. And there's a few places in town that do the Pokemon. Yeah, Pokemon game. Yeah, I think it's a game. I have played it. I have played it. I don't know the rules, but I have played it before. Battle, right? Pokemon Battle. Yeah. But there's a couple places in town where we get together and do that. And um, right, to encourage those outings. It's kind of cool. My 50-year-old right now is at Hills Alive with some of my friends. And it's like cool, awesome. There's a shared experience. You guys are going to hang out together, and wanting to facilitate that, wanting to encourage that. Um, uh, uh, and then but obviously, yeah, navigating that in the world of autism, um, uh, setting them up, for success, and say, okay, this is a safe place. This will be embraced. Um, and navigating that stuff where it may not go so well, because that's um, happen as well. Um, um, in terms of like, um, just thinking about some of oh, that's right, yeah, some of the difficulties. That's true. Um, uh, One of the young ladies that I've known over the years, phenomenal. She's awesome, has autism. Is very vocal about her autism. Has really embraced it. And it was her and I meeting in a room together. She walks in and takes her bra off. Right? Like your response is to start laughing because it's awkward. It's like, what in the world? And I was like, oh my gosh. I love so much that you feel comfortable to do that. Let's go tell your mom right now that this happened just to get it out there, because we don't need it secret. When you meet with me, you have to keep whatever clothes on that you have on when you walked into the room, and she was only in the room. I mean, it was a second she walked in, so we walked back out, 45 seconds later. Like, hey, I just want to let you know. Her mom's like, oh my gosh, she always does that. She usually takes it off in the car, but she must not have today. And uh, and that was it. Like, it was no big deal. But also, me wanting to like
Make sure.
it's like, okay, this is a clear boundary. This is a clear line. Um, uh, a lot of it was for me because I don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah,
Or,
make it awkward.
like I don't know. Like if she's like, yeah, I took my bra off at my therapist's office last week. What? You did what? It's like, and nobody knows about it but her and I.
Right.
That's
Yeah, just
screams danger to me.
just for transparency,
Yeah.
But then also, I mean, I can relate. Like bras aren't comfortable, but that's another thing you have to start doing in puberty is to start figuring out when you have to wear one, when you can get by with a sports bra, and all those things. It's like adds to the discomfort
Yeah.
in your body.
Yep. 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 And thankfully with her and her mom, it was, I have talked more about it right now than it took to deal with it when it happened, Um, and then there's, other, um, like hypersexuality, where it has gotten them into trouble. They didn't have boundaries. Um, and it's one thing, right? Like for me as a therapist and parents, um, teachers, to embrace somebody and to love and encourage, and to empathize and um, and a lot of times, like, I don't know, like legal issues surrounding sexuality. Hey, there's not going to be that grace, and I'm not saying there should be, because I also have children that I want to be safe, and free from being, um, sexually offended. And it might be the level of support that somebody needs who's unable um, to regulate themselves. But one of the jobs I'm thinking of was soliciting, um, minors online, and it had happened a couple times, and they had charged for it, and treatment focused on that. It reoffended and was arrested. It's like, okay, in that situation, like maybe that's what he communicated. It's like, okay, I need this level of support, which is awful to think about. But there's also other human beings on the other side of that experience. In his situation, it was undercover. That's, um, uh, um, and I know that's extreme, right? Um, but what for any of our kids is healthy sexuality, mutual, um, um, uh, back and forth relationship with another human being. Um, that's foundation is trust, love, um, and how do you see that, but by demonstrating that and respect. Um, yeah, and two, there's a time for a time I worked at a treatment for adolescent boys. They're all 18, helping them learn that where they could talk and what they wore when they left the room. And that may need to happen at home too. I remember my stepfather kind of talking to my brother and I about what we're going through, and uh, he kind of was like, "All right, it's time to start wearing shorts here," because we were a family that we ran around in our briefs. That was pretty normal.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, and it wasn't that, it was okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to say I fully understood it, but now I fully understand. Yeah, and we may have to do that in our own families. I've got an 8-year-old girl, and she still will walk talk. See,
Yeah.
But I know also that it's going to change pretty quickly. That's going to be as a dad. Kind of want to embrace where she's at, but it also embrace where she's headed. So.
Every family has to kind of figure it out and slowly teach it and what's appropriate and what's not. So do you have, I see the word resources on the bottom, but like,
Yeah.
is there books and things that you would, I think of, is there something you could read with your child that would kind of?
Yeah, there's some There's some great ones on Amazon. If you just search puberty, autism, um, there'll be some great ones there. And I think
Does that help with some awkward conversations, maybe if you had something in front of you to talk about?
and it's what I know, right? And I think about my own life. One day, bookshelf in my room, a book showed up called My Body and Me. Like,
It just showed up.
yeah, just showed
That's
up.
great.
Right, exactly. My Body and Me. I think that was My Body and Me or Discovering, I don't know, something, but it just showed up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is that? And it's about puberty and human sexuality. And I'm like, oh, mom, of course, this didn't just walk in my room, you know. But it was also, I was probably 14, 15. And so it was written, I think, from a 14, 15-year-old perspective. Um, uh, and yeah, I read it. I remember also reading it with some of my friends. When we were playing Nintendo, it was like, hey, look at the book my mom left.
Yeah.
Like
it starts out as a joke, but also you
I
can
know.
refer to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And we were immature boys, and so we made jokes about it, but we also gleaned information from it, and dealt with it the way that I think a lot of boys do, laughing and giggling. Or my sixth grade teacher was talking about taking a shower, that when you shower, you should touch yourself. Which makes, or he didn't say touch yourself. He said, maybe he did. He said, touch yourself, feel your body. He was trying to encourage you to be aware of any lumps or whatnot that might appear. But to a group of sixth grade boys, like, oh my gosh, we just started giggling, but that stuck with me, and when I think of men over the years, and women over the years that I know that have had breast cancer, and that had testicular cancer, they found it because they were, and it's like, okay. So I'm thankful for guys like Mr. Patrick, who in our eyes made a fool of himself, but was doing the right thing and telling us about it all. And and even though we giggled and laughed and made jokes about it, that it stuck. It's just where we are. And then think about my 11-year-old boy, knowing that their class had the conversation about puberty, and then he and I having conversations about puberty, and giving room for that laughter and that giggliness. Say, okay, hey, I want to talk about puberty. And it's like, oh my goodness. I was like, I know, right? And yeah, and and then hearing us say, what do you know? What do you think? And yeah, where he's at, it was pretty textbook biological process. Cool. It's good. And then there's a couple of YouTube seminars that are out there that I think do a great job. Uh, uh, Parents and professionals breaking down puberty, autism, and their experiences. One of the things that one of the women shared is that her daughter, when she's going through puberty, started pulling the hairs that grew because they were different colors. She didn't think they were supposed to be there, and so she was taking the hairs that were growing until they became too much. I was like, oh my gosh. And thankfully, it sounded like her and her mom caught on pretty quickly that this was happening. It's like, well, this is normal. You're going to get more hairs that are a different color. And yeah.
Probably a tricky thing then too is privacy to give your child.
Yeah.
At different points, like maybe there's parents that don't even realize that there's hair or that it's being plucked because they've just left them be in the bathroom and the door shut, which is probably normal, but I help Alyssa with all her stuff. So I mean, I know.
Do you?
But if I had a boy who was a little more capable of taking care of his own stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason for me to be in there and see anything, so I wouldn't even know there was a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's probably true. Figure out.
Yeah. And recording this. I cannot believe you said this. You might be like, what in the world? You're sharing this?
But pretty normal. And like you said, like you gotta have a conversation about it, move on.
Yeah.
Take care, do what you gotta do and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and then there's some so the books on Amazon, and then as resources.
I'll put those on Facebook for
Okay.
people to access for sure.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
This
you.
has been
I appreciate
awesome.
it. It's so funny. Like I feel like being a male in this world, this is kind of be asked to do this from time to time. Because there's not so many males in this profession, but also parents, young boys. It's like, what's normal and what's like the other thing too, um, is um, uh, gosh, is setting your house up. Like in our office, we have a router that protects the Wi-Fi. And it's normal to be curious and explore and to want to know about sexuality. And it's also normal for adults to put limits on it. Over the years, thinking of the extremes I've seen people I've worked with reach. It's like, man, if we just would have come back when we were so much younger. Because like when we think about the internet, it's more info than an adult bookstore would have, and we would never open an adult bookstore in a living room, and so to have that in place. And I get a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want to limit what I can search. I get it. It's annoying. Like I can't search Cabela's in my office. It's annoying, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but
maybe worth it.
I know, right? Yeah, you know.
At my house, I know, like, there was a time when my son, he's 16 now, but his computer, I couldn't see what was on the screen. And with like the door is always open in his room and the screen is visible. And I mean, he's still got his phone, I'm not saying, but it was just a simple change at one point where we thought, well, maybe we should just, it's like the fact that he knows that we can see it probably, but prevents at least some.
Yeah, and I think it's good, right, to have those
open door.
Yeah, and have those external limits put on us. And this just seems really silly, maybe, but I would, even I think I would be, within limits. Like I'm not going to drive through school zone going 90, but I would probably take advantage of that, and that people are aware that it restricts our, and that's good.
But I think there's so many kids, I think of my high school kids where their parents don't have their code for their phone even.
Yeah.
Like they have complete privacy and complete access to the internet. It's a tough situation. It's hard to go back once they've got access.
Yeah, and the trouble, that we've known people to get in for years. Yeah. So
That's a whole different conversation.
I know, right? And but it's all about encouraging healthy sexuality, and helping people avoid the craft. There's one gentleman, awesome guy, and he was solicited for nude pictures of himself, from a profile of a woman that he found very attractive. And then he sent nude pictures of himself, and then received messages from whoever this person was, asking for money, or else they were going to share these nude pictures with his friends on his social media profiles. And he was really distraught. And I know, I don't know him personally, but I've heard stories in the media of people attempting suicide when things like that have occurred, because it is like, that's like, oh my gosh, sharing the most vulnerable parts of myself, and it's out there, and then there's that chance that it's gonna be shared with everybody.
I think we probably assume our kids know.
Yep.
Maybe especially with any delays. I mean, you maybe haven't had a specific discussion about this.
Yep.
But this happened, and it does happen.
Yep.
Just for them to be aware.
Yeah. And
is good.
and I think, for this young man, everything turned out okay. It was a bluff. They didn't, thankfully. But then it was good for him and I. It's like, hey, just so you know, you're awesome and you're good looking. I was gonna and to put it that bluntly, it's like no
Just so
one's
you know, this is not what people
right,
do.
right.
really.
This unless there's bad intent.
It just, like you said, it opens the conversation up even though for.
Yep.
And I think that's the big theme of all of it. It's just to get over our own awkwardness probably. Cause I mean, you're very open with your patients and your own kids, but
Yeah.
not all of us have such easy flowing conversations.
I know,
about this stuff.
and I do, I know, and I recognize, it wasn't,
It's
this
good
is
though. It's
over
a goal.
years and having, worked with them. And then when I started that treatment facility, seeing some things that did shock me, I was like, oh my gosh, and having an awesome support around me and walk me through it. I do recognize that there's that.
He said, in my field, we talk about this stuff all the time. No big deal.
Yeah,
It's like, that's the goal to get to where it's easy.
Sure.
Well,
Cool. Well, thank you.
You have anything?
I appreciate it.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Thank
This
you.
has been awesome.
All right.